So next up we have Lovell from London, and let's give him a round of applause to get this thing started.
Hello. It's great to be back here. This is my third time now. And I want to say a little bit about HashRocket. I love HashRocket. I'm really pleased that they invited me back for the third time. And I was trying to think earlier how I could kind of repay the favor. So I decided that the 1.8 style HashRocket syntax is old and dated, right? And Sam knows this. I got you, Sam. So the 1.8 syntax is old and dated and nobody uses it anymore, right? So I thought I'd try and redesign the HashRocket logo for free. Let's just see how this works out. If you like it, you can pay for it. So I started off with the... Just bringing you up to date, right? So we've got the 1.9 thing going on, but then of course the name HashRocket doesn't make any sense anymore. So I was thinking, and I just ate lunch and stuff. Well, but then I thought, colon, yeah, some people think it's one thing, some people think it's the other. So I just wanted to disambiguate. Remember, you can use this for free. It's no charge. And then I just thought large intestine, yeah. Hi, this is large intestine. Boutique web agency. It's not really going to work, so I needed to bring it into this century. So I dropped some of the vowels. So we've got large intestiner. And anyway, as I said, you can use this. Feel free, feel free. So I love poetry. Yeah. And I'm from England. And Shakespeare's my dog. So I thought I'd write a sonnet. This is just for you. Right, here goes. This is going to suck so hard. There was a young man named Beneth. To ACR, he was invited againeth. So, they just tended to use the words that we know, but just end them with eth. So, he doth spoke for a bit, speaketh strange random shit, and won't be invited againeth. Yeah. That's my dog. That's my dog. Dropping that Shakespeare shit. So I enjoyed Paolo's talk. It was fantastic. And it amazes me how they can replicate human behavior. I mean, it's fucking totally indistinguishable from real life. So, I hope you got your snake case entrance in. Come on. There's mine. This is faux snake skin, don't worry. So anyway, there is a talk. And I just wanted to cover the fact that, the title's called FOSS Like a Boss, which is just a really shitty mnemonic. The whole talk really is about open source software. I'm not necessarily interested in this style of freedom. Not overly interested in this style of freedom either, although, he's a smart guy. When someone thinks Netflix is an affront to freedom, then, This one's for the Jackson brothers. Emacs, there he is, look, Emacs fan. I want to start off with a question that I know the answer to already. Who uses open source software here? Right, it's everyone, right? There was one person there that said no. There was one person that said no. They're an alien. So what I'm going to say is, why would you contribute to open source software? What's the point? And I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of the regular user of open source software. None of this is going to come from the maintainer's perspective. So I just thought, how can I best describe this? So I thought what I'll do is I'll break some jargon. I'll bust some jargon. And I'm going to cover a few of the things that they say and a few of the things that they mean. And one of them is about raising your public profile. That's what they say. What they mean is, you'll never meet these people in person. Another one that you hear touted around is, yeah, travel the world, speak at conferences. It's all connected to the whole public profile thing. What that really means is you're going to spend months of time preparing talks. You're going to be in airports. You're going to have jet lag. You're going to be in airports. You're going to get speaking anxiety. Airports, shit, airports. Let's talk about altruism, so the concern for or devotion to the welfare of others. Now, what that really means is you're going to provide critical components to businesses making millions of dollars for fuck all. And my personal favourite is the GitHub as a CV. Well, I tried to think of the best way to describe this, and I came up with a couple of images. There's a ball. There's some shit. There's some bullshit. And I guess you're starting to think now, like, hold up a minute. This guy's supposed to be encouraging us to contribute to open source software, right? So I'm going to try and do that in a sensible way now. And this is a serious point. So this is Ryan Biggs, and this is somebody that's recently fallen out of the open source community. And this is somebody that contributes loads to the community. I'm sure at least half of you use software that this guy's written or had a part in. And he says that maintaining open source software for free is not sustainable long term. And that's why he quit. And that kind of makes me sad. And this is my buddy Bozhidar Batsov. So you might know this guy from the Rubocop and the Ruby Style Guide and also Emacs. And he says users act like customers, and they're not your customers, and they're making money from your free time, right? And there's this kind of foundation principle that the people that pay the least expect the most. So here's a picture of an open source maintainer. This is the wasteland that is open source projects. There's another maintainer there, still fairly aggrieved, kind of sad. It's a stressful existence. There's another one there. And this is a user. It's like fucking nirvana. They've got nothing to worry about. They're getting shit for free, but still they're the most angry people in the world. There's another user. There's the rest of your users. And it can suck being a maintainer and having all of this expectation piled upon you. So what I'm going to try and do is encourage you to make OSS great again. So for best effect, I might need to take my glasses off there. So there is a striking familial resemblance. And I wanted to try and describe this guy in two pictures. So I chose an ass and a hat. Ass hat. Okay, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. And for those of you that I haven't offended yet, well, just give it time. I completely stole this from somewhere on the internet, but it just really resonated with me. Trump is what would happen if the comments section became a human and ran for president. So we actually have a street named after Donald Trump. And I think you might have heard this expression like up shit creek. We say up Trump Street. And just to give a kind of well-rounded and give all of the candidates a chance, I decided to get Hillary involved. That's so fucking scary. That is actually scarier than I remember. Fuck. Some guy earlier stole my joke. Anyway. So I was going to talk about this first, and somebody beat me to it. And, this whole thing about JavaScript and Ruby and Java being phased out. But I was looking through the signatures, and I saw DT. And I just thought, wait a minute, those initials sound familiar. And I was kind of looking for Trump quotes, and I found this. It's like, as has been stated continuously in the press, people are using JavaScript, Ruby, and Java unabated. And this is from Donald Trump. And now back to your regular broadcast. So this is actually a quote from somebody that I know, and I'm going to tell you a little story. So this guy said open source is just something that other people do. Like, why would I ever do open source software? I'm not smart enough. So there's a little story. So last summer I was teaching a boot camp for a group of 8 or 9 students. I probably really should know the number, shouldn't I? There was 8 students, and it was a boot camp that took place during the summer. It was over the course of 3 months, and it was like a residential thing. So these people, they're kind of like varied backgrounds. Some of them had done programming before, some of them hadn't. And there was one guy in particular, and we were sat down and we were going through one of the exercises, and we hit a problem with the Ruby documentation. So he's reading through it and he said to me, look, I followed the documentation and this was just plain wrong. And I was like, yeah, that kind of happens sometimes, like I was thinking this, I didn't actually say it, I didn't want to colour his judgment about Ruby, that's kind of a bit of a hellscape. But he says to me, well, what could we actually fix this? I was like, yeah, of course we could. And he's like, what, you mean we could actually fork the Ruby code base, make these changes to the documentation, push them up, and they'd get merged? So I was like, yeah, sure, of course. And his mind was completely blown. He was like, no way, you're joking, right? He said, I'm going to make the change, you're going to commit it, they're going to see your name. Like, no, I'm not like that. I'm not that kind of person. But let's try it anyway. So we did it, and we pushed it up, and we waited 6 months. And I'd left that company, and things happened, civilizations formed, 16 million JavaScript frameworks were born and died. But eventually, it actually got merged, right? And this was like, as I said, this was long after I left that organization. And the guy was his mind was completely blown. And this taught him like one important thing. Well, 2 important things. Number one is that open source can sometimes be a bit slow. But more importantly, that actually, you can contribute to open source. It's there for you. And all right, you might say, well, this is just a kind of basic documentation patch. I wish a startup would come about that would literally invent something that any time somebody says this is just a documentation patch, like a boxing glove would come out of the nearest laptop and punch you square in the nose. Because there's no such thing as just this kind of patch or just this kind of patch, right? This is going to help somebody in the future. This is going to help somebody. This is going to shortcut them to the solution that they need. They're not going to spend minutes or hours like we did kind of spinning our gears trying to figure out what was going on. Anyway, so at the moment, there's a lot of transformative stuff going on in government. So I worked for these guys for a while. This is me at my desk. And recently I just changed allegiances to another part of government, the Treasury. This is me at my desk at the Treasury. One of the problems with government is that traditionally we've liked to build systems like this. We build Death Stars, right? So I'll give you an example of one project. It was a project for the NHS, which is the National Health Service, and the expected cost of this project was £2.3 billion, right? Which is, it's not exactly chopped liver in the first place. That's a lot of money, that's kind of about half of my day rate. So government, what they do is, because procurement's completely busted in government, they get these big, massive, huge agencies, and basically they are tasked with extracting as much money as possible in a shorter space of time as possible from the government, and they do it really well. And this particular agency extracted £12 billion from the government. And there was absolutely no transparency in this process. None of this stuff was open source. There were taxpayers paying lots and lots of money for this. And eventually, the project was delivered. Actually, it wasn't. It wasn't delivered at all. And, as I said, £12 billion worth of taxpayers' money went into this, and it just disappeared. And the government uses open source for transparency, and there's different government departments working on kind of shared infrastructure, and it's great that we can share these kind of components and find cost savings from doing that. So open source has been a real big win for government. And I understand you folks have got your own open source kind of standards that you're doing when you're building government projects. And a funny story, I was actually searching for a logo for 18F, and the first hit that came up on Google was this. She's like, probably says a lot about America, but yeah. So anyway, so back to the Death Star. So one really cool thing that popped up just the other day is this was a junior member of my team, Tatiana, and she tweeted this. So one of the things that we do in government is we make all of our templates and things available as open source so other governmental departments can use it and have a consistent and kind of regular style. So this is kind of what the GovUK website looks like with the regular GovUK content. But some bright spark came along and basically reproduced the whole of GovUK, but from the first order. And like, if the amount of time and effort that this person put into this was incredible, it's really, really funny. So like, one of the things they did is like, what we do. We support the Prime Minister and ensure the effective running of government. Like their alternative actually reads better to me. We use advanced military technology and a strong hand to bring the rule of law back to the galaxy. Like those sentences are pretty much interchangeable. You could just swap that copy around and it would work. So anyway, so it's probably best for me to kind of give you some of my ideas about what constitutes a contribution. Because it's not always just code. The reality is, since GitHub is the kind of canonical source of all of this open source software, is that, well, it's pretty much whatever GitHub says is a contribution, and sorry, not sorry. So opening issues on projects, on open source projects, is classed as a contribution, right? So you've got your little empty square here, and you open an issue. All right, I opened this on my own repository, right? So this is, there was no maintainers were harmed in the making of this talk. Just me. Yeah, so opening this proof point for a talk, this sucks and so do you. And guess what happens? Yay, you get a green contribution square for telling somebody that they suck. Like surely, like, so if you want a full timeline, just go to every single project that you find and just tell the maintainer that they suck. Do not fucking do that. Like seriously, do not do that. And if you do it, don't say I told you to do it. And this is where it all starts to fall down, right? So imagine this. You're a maintainer, you know, you've been building this software, you just released it to the world because you were told that it was the right thing to do. And then the next thing you know, somebody comes along and tells you you suck, right? So you need to read that, you need to parse it, you need to kind of like reassess your life's goals and just wonder what the fuck you're actually doing. And you know, you spend time and effort and energy doing that, but in closing the issue, you don't get any kind of tick on your contribution graph, right? And that really sucks. Like, what's that about? You know, if you get hundreds of issues opened on your project and you're spending time triaging and like shuffling them around and closing issues and, you know, even responding to issues and closing them, you don't get a contribution for that. And that to me has always been a bit of a sore point. One of the important things that you can do to your friendly neighborhood open source maintainer is give thanks, right? This is how the internet works. I love the work of this guy, and this friend says, well, tell him then. We're like, but there's no need for that. I don't like that guy's work though. Hey, you suck and I hate you. It's like, why do people do that? What's wrong with this, right? So the flip side of what I just showed you is, right, you can open issues telling somebody they suck and get a contribution. Guess what? You can open issues saying thanks to people, and you also get a contribution tick if that means anything to you. And in a world of like angry users that are full of expectation and not willing to exert any effort on your project, those little thank yous add up to a lot. And as I say, they get you your little contribution checkbox if that means something to you. And if you didn't believe me, this tweet just came up the other day from a friend of mine saying, after a thank you that he'd received, just how much it meant to him. So, you know, I would encourage you all to just say thanks once in a while, but wait till the end of the talk. So, also I want to cover the kind of paradox about the GitHub timeline. So the GitHub timeline is basically most people's window into open source contributions and like your own contributions to open source. And that's mostly bullshit, because when you have showers that are like bigger contributors than you are, like this shower went hard. This is like the biggest streak I've ever seen before. So I was looking at my buddy Constantine's timeline, right? So I mean, you can, you know, like Constantine is the only person that can basically challenge a shower for contributions. But you know, I spotted something there and I was like, what? Like, I'm not fucking standing for this. Like, you're supposed to be this big, like, open source guy. You know, no, this isn't good. But then it kind of occurred to me, maybe he was stuck, he was in a bit of trouble, like maybe something had happened to him. Like, you know, so I don't know what the cow behind's doing. Look, it's like, not that cows laugh, of course, that would be strange. So I asked him, like, you know, I'm curious, what actually happened on September the 24th, 2015? And he said, in typical Constantine style, and I had some lols. So there's one other thing, you know, one other contribution you can make. You can help with open issues. And if you use a gem at work, you know, if you use something day in, day out, and you kind of take and you never really give, you know, just attempt to go through the issues, see what's open, see if there's anything you can triage, see if there's anything, you know, if you're not an experienced or not a confident developer, a lot of the big open source projects are tagging issues with labels like such as, you know, easy or for beginners or like, you know, needs assistance, those kinds of things. Try and do that. And also, of course, another great contribution you can make is actually donating some money to open source software maintainers. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And actually, I thought it would be quite cool for me to say, I'm going to donate £176.80, which in freedom money is $250. So that's my Twitter handle, or you can come and find me after. If you're a maintainer of an open source project, except for JavaScript, because at this stage, money's not really going to help you. That's a joke. That's a joke. It was a joke. I don't mean it. I don't mean it. But PHP, of course. No. No. If you're a maintainer of an open source project, come and find me or tweet me, and send me a link to like your Amazon wish list or to your PayPal email address or something, and I promise I will donate some money to you until this money runs out, whether or not I use that project myself. Of course, there's a more formalized approach to this, and that's Ruby Together. So the Ruby Together, I believe, is a non-profit organization that was set up for just this very purpose. So you donate money to them, and they repurpose this, and they shuffle this around, and they have people that work on the critical components or the critical pieces of infrastructure, specifically, I believe, in the Ruby community. So things like bundler and Ruby gems and those kinds of things that basically we all rely on and all depend on, but none of us contribute to financially. Another great thing you can do is actually kind of community outreach. So back in the day, I was using Celluloid, and I was trying to hack on Celluloid, and this was me. Like, I didn't have the first idea about what I was doing. And, you know, I did the kind of regular stuff. I kind of tidied up some of the code, removed some white space, felt like, yeah, you know, I'm making contributions. And I kind of was at a loss, really. But I was using Celluloid in a professional setting for a project that I worked on. So I decided to go and speak about the thing that I know nothing about. And that's really great. You know, like for somebody that's building like open source libraries, it's great if you can help them get the word out there. This was actually the very first talk I ever gave in the Ruby community. And somebody on YouTube had an opinion about this. I don't want to use this airtime to kind of criticize this person, you know. I love Ruby and I like Celluloid, but I feel meaningless words coming forth. Well, you know. So I kind of stalked the guy. Basically, I just stalked him. I found his Twitter handle. He said some things about learning OSS, which kind of resonated with me because I'm talking about OSS. But the rest of it, I don't really understand. Now, of course, you shouldn't really read the comments, and you definitely shouldn't reply to them. But, you know. You know, I'm a mature guy. Yeah, I just let it just slide right over me. Yeah, he's a poopy head. And of course, you can contribute documentation. You know, it's one of the things that that none of us like to do, but something that can be really helpful, especially when projects are in their infancy and this kind of stuff's lacking. You know, this whole idea in the Ruby community that, oh yeah, the specs are documentation. Nah, the specs aren't documentation. Not at all. And of course, saying that documentation fixes or documentation pull requests are not meaningful, well, we looked over this. They are meaningful to some people. And of course, code merged to master, right? Of course that is a contribution. Now, I specifically shied away from talking about all of the different kinds of contributions you can make to open source projects in terms of code committed. If you want some pointers on that, then come and find me after. That could be a talk in itself. But I do know one thing that the JavaScript folks are missing at the moment. It's a left pad solution. So, left padding strings is important shit, and it is a tough problem to solve. So if any of you have got any chops, if you've padded strings before, feel free to contribute there. Your help will be greatly received. So, we've spoken about some of the kinds of contributions you can make. So I wanted to try and just cover a few things before you make a contribution. So a kind of checklist, if you will. So the first thing is, if you're about to embark on a really big feature, don't just go and do it blind. Ask the maintainer first. Ask if they've got something that they're kind of lining up first. See if there are any already open pull requests or closed pull requests or issues that have been raised that are trying to address this particular issue. Because the worst thing that can happen is you can spend an almost inordinate amount of time crafting something really nice. And then the maintainer has to come along and tell you, I'm really sorry, but this just doesn't suit with our vision. Or this doesn't suit the project at this particular moment in time. Or there was a competing pull request. I know that's happened to me before, and I kind of felt a bit bummed out on it. Another great point is for you to read the fucking contributing guide. Some people have specific styles, some people like code written in a certain way. There might be a whole bunch of different things that you need to do before you contribute to this project. And one of the big ones as well is just understand that just because you committed or you open this pull request, the chances are it might never get merged. The thing I think that some people get wrong, and I was one of these people, was that for us as contributors, our needs are different to the maintainers, right? We think that once we've contributed this pull request, once we've opened a pull request and it gets merged, we're done. That's us, we're out. We drop the mic, we're finished. We're telling all our friends that we just contributed something to this project. Everything's great for us. But for the maintainer, that's just when their journey really starts, because they have to maintain your shitty code for the rest of time until it gets deleted from the project or the project moves on or whatever. So understand that sometimes during the review process, you might not hear things that you particularly like. And also understand that sometimes out in the field, it can be kind of tricky, And of course, Kim's not going to relocate to San Francisco, so you can just get that out of your mind straight away. One interesting thing about Kim Jong-il is that he's actually contributed to Rails. So I don't know if you saw this land in Rails recently. There's our benevolent dictator. And I mean, this was a lot of people's reaction when they saw this. It was like, nope, nope. And one other thing as well that I want to cover is, sometimes you're going to contribute something and you're going to be waiting for this to be reviewed, right? And it's almost like once you open a pull request, it's like time stands still sometimes. You're there, you're like, come on. But I'm going to give you one piece of advice. Don't fucking incessantly ping the maintainers, right? Seriously. It's like, this doesn't fucking help. It doesn't speed things up. All it does is just apply untold pressure on the maintainers that are already stressed enough. Anytime that you give a +1, this lands in their inbox. It's just another reminder that they suck and they're not spending enough time on your reviewing your code or on their project that is probably just something they do in their own time. And also, this one was absolutely amazing when I saw this the first time. So somebody contributed this piece of software, and this guy is like, I'll take a look later, much, much later because I'm Ukrainian and we have a revolution right now. Sorry. So like, you've got the contributor here, he's like, come on, and you've got this guy there, it's like, okay, all right. So this is the bit where I try and rationalize a seemingly random collection of memes and largely unrelated things, but with some semblance of a theme that isn't entirely coherent, but probably has some deeper meaning, but maybe not. So number one, maintainers are a scarce resource that we should try and protect as much as possible, right? Free as in beer, open source is just complete bullshit. We should try and contribute where we can, and free as in open source maintainers doing this long term is completely unsustainable. You should try and give thanks as much as possible. You should contribute by any means, right? And that kind of brings us to the end of the topic, but the other stuff's just about to start. So of course the HashRocket people love their like water sports and like SARP and surfing and stuff, and I know some of the people in the crowd have got a phobia of sharks, so sorry. And I don't know if you remember from last year, right? So I want to apologise to the people who were here last year, because what I'm doing right now is, the technical term for this is just rehashing your old jokes that worked. So there's this like thing, there's like, these sharks have probes on them so they can be tracked, right? So you don't just suddenly happen upon a hungry shark while you're swimming in the sea, right? And it's really cool, it gives you information about the sharks, their names and stuff. And last year I decided that I was going to try and start a startup, like, startup idea. I never really got anywhere with this, so if anyone wants to pick the ball up, then feel free to do it. Hot single sharks in your area. So I tweeted these people last year, and I was serious about this at the time. I was interested in licensing the technology to help single sharks meet other single sharks, right? So they replied back. It's good to be taken seriously once in a while. You're all laughing, but this is a serious thing for me. I really wanted to try and hook sharks up. So I replied, just a couple of sharks, kicking back, no pressure, let's just see how it goes. So I just wanted to give them another little nudge this year. And, a year's passed, almost to the day, right? So a year's passed almost to the day. I wondered if you'd given my shark dating pitch from last year some thought yet, hit me up. I haven't had any bites yet. Good bites, man. Come on. But regardless of that, I kind of felt a bit bummed out. So I was just playing with my little prototype at home. And guess what? I actually came up with a hit. So we've got this cute little lady and this guy. But don't worry, they're safe, because some people in South Carolina made some shark cages. Oh, man. And anyway, that brings me to... I'm so not coming back next year. So I wanted to say thanks to Lurge and Testiner, and this is where you give the rapturous applause. Thanks. And of course, don't forget the $250 thing or the £876.60 thing. All right. I can take questions, but you're probably just going to say, why?